Nick Kypreos here for an off-season edition of the Real Kyper at Noon show. We've brought you some interviews, Mark Messier, Mike Richter, Bob McKenzie with his launch of his new book. And now we're going to do a little bit of a State of a Union. Let's see where we're at this point, because there's so much talk about off ice and whether or not the NHL and the NHL Players Association, can get together and come up with a date that starts our 2021 season. Now, here's a treat for all of you. For the first time on the Real Kyper at Noon show, we're going to put together a roundtable. Yeah, multiple players all at the same time, not just Doug Maclean here, folks. We're going to add two prominent agents. These guys have been around for a long, long time. They know the business as well as anybody. And unfortunately, besides the pure entertainment and the fun out of the game, there is that business side, the dollar and cents, and where it makes sense for the owners and the players. So let's dive into that. We're also joined by Ian Pulver, Will Sports. He's been on the show before. He's also worked many years in the National Hockey League Players Association. He knows so much. He represents players like Tyler Seguin, Thomas Chabot, David Savard. He's going to come into play for the next little while. Allan Walsh, yes, outgoing Allan Walsh. Who doesn't love an Allan Walsh tweet out there? And of course, he's with Octagon Agency based out of LA. He's got Marc-Andre Fleury, Max Pacioretty, Jonathan Huberdeau, all these great players. He's in the loop as much as anyone. And yes, to top it off, I'm bringing back my partner in crime, Doug Maclean, out of Florida now. So before we get going, guys, before we almost trivialize the game of hockey against this pandemic, tell us where you're all situated and let us know what's going on around your community when it comes to COVID. You see a light out of the end of the tunnel. Before we get into the dissecting hockey here, tell us what you see and hear from your communities. Let's start with you, Ian, and then move over to Allan, and then you pick it up, Doug Maclean.
Thanks, Nick, for having me on the show. I can report that I haven't moved from my house in 9 months. There's not a whole lot of going on up here in Toronto. We're in a complete shutdown. And so there's not a lot to report. The light at the end of the tunnel up here, it always comes back to hockey. There is no hockey. So there is no light right now. There's no minor hockey. There's no Ontario League hockey. There's not a lot of, maybe hockey's the barometer. And right now, there's not a whole lot except to stay safe and hope that everybody stays safe and respects COVID.
Allan?
Hang on a second. I just got a tweet. I'll be right back.
You're going to reply? Should we go run to our phones?
It's from John Shannon. Congratulating you on how smart you are.
Well, I see Max paying attention. I'm here in LA. We've been shut down again since Monday here in LA County. My kids have not been to school since March. They're still doing school virtually. My son's a high school senior, sitting in his bedroom every day for 7 hours, staring at a laptop. My daughter's in 11th grade doing the same. All restaurants now are shut down except for takeout and delivery. For several months, we at least were allowed to go and sit out on a patio. That's no longer allowed by county regulations. Retail stores are limited to 25% capacity. Most malls are pretty much shut down. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. Generally, I fly last 25 years, an average of 250,000 miles a year. I have not been on a plane since March. We're hoping that life returns to some level of normalcy soon. They're saying, at least out here in LA, we can expect vaccine, to be available for the general population sometime June or July, and that by August, September, hopefully we're back to some level of living our lives again.
Mac, what's
Walsh,
going on
can
in
you
Florida? Sorry, Ian.
Go ahead, Ian.
I was going to ask Walsh to save some vaccine for us up here in Canada because our Prime Minister doesn't know how to circulate it or manufacture it. So we're going to be lost to the wicket.
So, you know what, it's been a tough situation. I left PEI October 12th after spending the summer in essentially COVID-free Prince Edward Island. Jill and I went on a 5-week RV trip through 17 states, through Utah, the Grand Canyon, Nevada. I mean, it was an amazing trip. And we got to Florida on the 20th of November, and I just looked, 8,847 cases. December 1st was the last update. So it's not very good in Florida, but it is not shut down. It is mind-boggling to me. I played golf this morning. I was brutal on the front nine, 49. I come back with a 41 on the back, so I felt a little better. The pool, we have very few people going to our pool, so I was there yesterday essentially by myself. The beach, everybody is social distancing, so I'm in my own little bubble here, but you know, it seems the governor here seems to think that it's okay to leave it wide open. I don't get it. I go up for takeout the other night, and I drive on the way back. I go by a bar, and they're nose to nose. It really is alarming at how little care they're taking. You know, how they're taking this, which is disappointing to say the least.
Well, I don't know what surprises me more, that or the fact that Jill's still married to you after traveling 17 states with you in an RV.
7,250 miles, and she only told me to F off 112 times.
Oh my gosh. Well, listen, I'm glad you're all safe and sound. It sounds like you guys have a pretty good grasp, I guess, of where we are today. And really, I wanted to get all of you guys together on this panel to really get a feel on where we are today, but where are we going in the short term and potentially the long term? You guys are up to date. Here we are in the first week of December. What we thought when we first heard of an extension on the CBA in the first week of July really would have had the guys pretty much in their cities getting ready for training camp. As we know, that's not the case. So let me throw this at you without you guys following up. I only want a number, okay, from each one of you. And if I told you at the end of the return to play, when they presented the Stanley Cup to Tampa Bay, we would have given the players and the owners and Gary Bettman in the league office, the PA, a 10 out of 10 for an amazing job under the circumstances. So I ask you, here we are a few months later, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do we put the state of next season on a scale of 1 to 10? Let's start with you, Ian. Give me a number, and then Allan, and then I want to hear from Doug.
A scale of 1 to 10 to say they're going to play or not? Or what's going on?
The state of the game right now. The sense of urgency, however you want to paint it. How bad is this situation right now between the players and the owner on a scale of 1 to 10?
Well, nothing ceases to amaze me anymore, really, for a long time. It's almost par for the course, Kipper. I mean,
5?
It's somewhere hover. No, I would say it's I'd give it an 8, a 7.5 out of 10.
Okay,
I mean, so this is par.
That's good.
Par.
Okay, Allan,
I'd say right now I'd give it between an 8 and a 9 out of 10. I think what we're looking at right now is really a blip. Let's call it what it is. There's some owners out there, not many, 5, 6, 4, who are very unhappy with the current CBA, very unhappy with the current agreement. And I think they've been very loud about it in their constituency. And there's a lot of heat on Gary to go out there right now and try to, he doesn't like the word, but it's renegotiate. And he's looking to renegotiate the deal and get better terms before starting the season.
Okay, so I'm surprised, actually. Here we got two prominent agents representing some of the biggest names in hockey. Mac, they don't see it that dire. I know the hockey fans, there's a lot of them that see it, really, they put it at a 2 or 3 in terms of a scale of 1 to 10 on where we are. How about you? Is it as dire as some fans think it is, or are you leaning towards Allan and Ian?
Okay, with the COVID situation, the way it's happened and the way it's come with this second wave, I mean, we all hoped this wouldn't happen. The players, the owners, everybody, the fans would have hoped that this wouldn't have hit us at this particular time. So this has put a monkey wrench into it, because they thought they would be starting with at least, 25% fans, 40% fans. So now all of a sudden it's not there, and they're going to start with nobody. So I'm putting it at an 8. I think it's the same as we always are. We're going to negotiate, I don't call it renegotiate. It's a simple negotiation. Ever since it went 50-50, boys, it's a simple negotiation.
Okay. Hold on for a second.
But hold on, wait.
Yeah,
but the negotiation is over. The negotiation is
over.
over. We've negotiated.
But Allan, it's over. I get that. But so what happens now when the players come back and they get what they were told they were going to get? Okay?
Yep.
And the owners don't get any revenue except the TV portion of their money. And then at the end of the day, we look back at the 50-50 and the players are going to owe a shitload of money to them. So what is, I don't get this. What's so bad here? They're going to play. You know, and I know they're going to get a deal done and they're going to play.
I believe they will. I hope they will.
So what's wrong with this picture? What's the renegotiation? Maybe you guys need to educate me here.
Mac, the renegotiation is there are hard numbers that were signed, sealed, and delivered to the players. Now, if I did a deal with somebody and we had signed documents and they wanted to renegotiate the numbers, change the numbers, and this is what it's always, I don't know every last detail, but I do know that the biggest issue that the owners have, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but the last 3 years on the escrow are capped at 6%. And the league says, no, we need a higher number than that. That's the renegotiation.
Let's take a step back here. It hits in March. The league and the Players Association discuss whether they're going to finish the season. League really wants to finish the season, award the Stanley Cup. Players hadn't been paid their last payroll. They were going to get it. Players give up that payroll, I think close to $140 million. They folded into a future collective agreement in their overall basic agreement MOU that they agreed to. They go into a bubble. They finish it off. They have a 71-page memorandum of understanding. And as a part of foregoing that last $140 million, going into the bubble, so on and so forth, they thought everything was signed, sealed, and delivered. The league did a great job building in safeguards into this 6-year collective agreement, which could turn into a 7th year if the league pays the players too much money. Players thought it was all done. There's law dating back to the Mike Vernon 1994 decision that when you sign a contract in the National Hockey League, contract. If you don't have that signed contract, that's not a contract. The parties agreed, and now, for whatever reason, and it may be good reason on the league's part to ask, that's where the problem lies. And the fact that plans haven't been set yet for a new season is a bit unnerving to everybody. And that's what we're faced with. But the league has built-in safeguards throughout the whole deal to make sure that if they pay the players too much money, they will get it back.
And if you listen to what Gary Bettman said today, he basically made the argument that he's really looking out for the players' best interests here. And he's concerned about the cap staying flat for too many years. And he wants to step in and change the whole arrangement because it's really better for the players. That's who he's looking out for. Now, let me ask you a question. We were locked out for half a season, 2012-13. And when that deal was negotiated, the Canadian dollar and the US dollar were almost at par. And 6 months into that collective bargaining agreement, the oil market crashed. The Canadian dollar dropped precipitously, causing escrow to jump beyond anybody's imagination when they did that deal. Could you imagine? Remember, it's 50-50. That's not changing. But can you imagine if the players came to the table in 2014 when the ink on the deal is barely dry and saying to the owners, we don't like the way this deal has turned out and we'd like a do-over in how we're going to be compensated this year and next year and smooth out escrow over the life of the deal. The response would have been, hey, you made a deal, you put your name down on that piece of paper, you ratified that deal, you approved that deal, now live with it. So here we are now 4 months after the ink is barely dry on this CBA extension, and whether Gary Bettman is coming to the table and threatening to cancel the season or not, he's got every right to ask. He's got every right to ask, hey, there are some issues that we have on our side. We have some owners that are in trouble cash flow wise, and we need to make some further accommodation on our side. Will you guys work with us? And in exchange for you accommodating us here, we're going to offer you Y. You can say no, and we'll set a date for the season, and we'll go forward. But in the spirit of our newfound cooperation, we'd really like you to work with us here. He has every right to ask, but the players have every right to say, we made a deal and we expect you to honor this deal. And we already agreed to give up 72% to receive 72% of our compensation on the year, and that's the deal we're going to go forward with.
Mac, based on how giving the players were in 2004 and 2012, you don't necessarily blame the owners if they were as giving back then. Hopefully they're as giving now, right? I mean, are they playing off of how soft or how easy they are to go back and give? I
don't think they're playing off that. I think, and I come back to the situation that nobody expected this to be as dire as it is. So I guess if you guys believe that the 50-50 split, which was the most hotly contested event in the history of professional hockey negotiations when it was 50-50 of revenue split between the players and the, I was a general manager at the time when it was 78% going to the players and the other going to us as management ownership. I recall that very vividly. And it was a hotly contested thing to get it to 50-50. So now you guys are telling me that, you know, because we've nailed escrow as a permanent thing, if the owners hit 20% of their revenue this year based on the season, they're not going to expect any of this money back. You know what? I don't know. I don't like the renegotiation. I don't like the presentation of that. But who's going to pay the owners back on this 50-50 split? Are you guys suggesting that the 50-50 split is now out the window? It's gone?
No, Mac.
No, Doug. There's
the whole concept of the CBA, the whole concept of this deal. It's a very simple concept. The players wanted to lock in as much of their compensation as possible for the 2021 season. And it was well understood by everybody. They prepared a worst case scenario of no fans in the building for most of the season. They prepared a moderate case scenario, and they prepared a best case scenario. The players agreed to receive 72% of their compensation on the year. And it's clear it's going to be, whatever scenario we're living under, it's going to be more than 50% of hockey-related revenues. But the whole concept of the deal,
how much is, of the 72%, how much is deferred?
Let me finish. But the whole concept of the deal is that the owners are going to be made whole over time by the carryover of the escrow debt. Whether it's 400 million, 600 million, the cap is remaining flat. We're going to return to a normal, hopefully at some point, certainly by the 21-22 season, where buildings can be almost full, if not completely full, and revenues will rise. We have a new US TV deal coming. The cap will stay flat, and over a number of years, the owners will be made whole. And only after they're made whole will the cap start to rise again. How do we know that it was contemplated that it might take 6 years to get the owners whole? They added a 7th year. And they set escrow in that year at 9%, not 6%. And the only way that extra year is added onto the deal is if there's, I believe, 140 million of escrow debt remaining unpaid by that 6th year. So it was contemplated. There's no surprise here. And nothing is unforeseen. Don't tell me 4 months ago we didn't have a good idea that buildings would probably be empty in December and January when we're starting a new season.
Allan, it was my understanding.
What are the players getting back in deferred money of the 72?
10%.
Yeah. So they're essentially getting 82% of their salary.
Correct. Over time. Well, the 10% is not paid back without interest until years 4, 5, and 6 of this deal.
Yeah.
So all we're doing is just pushing the tab back. That's all.
So do you think that it's better off to owe the money down the road than it is to work out a deal right now that works for both sides so that the pain doesn't continue for X amount of years after?
Well, to that point, in recent years when owners were doing a lot better than the players on non-hockey related revenues, the players never came back and asked for more money, right? And so the deal's the deal. And for it to be asked on the heels of foregoing final pay, doing a brand new collective agreement, going into the bubble, and now an ask before you get started, it's a little bit like, come on,
So-
why don't we start the deal, see how it goes, and maybe down the road, if the owners have something to offer the players in exchange for changes that may be necessary, then you can amend your deal. But before the start, I'm not sure they need to. I think they want to. I think that their wants right now are wanting to see if they can get more. But, Gary and the league office did a really good job asking the players to help finance, next year by getting them to defer money and also to bank the future debt by giving them the 7th year. So the league came out of this with a great stopgap to protect the owners from any overages over the 50%.
Okay, let's just touch.
When you and Goodnow were at 78% of the revenue, you were offering to pay some back to us in those days.
I
You're
tell you what,
the owner should have given some back over
What-
the top the
Mac.
top the 50-50.
Whatever-
Mac,
whatever-
Arthur Levitt claimed it was, I believe, 73% of revenues, but none of those reports that he ever reviewed were audited. It was just what the teams gave him. I understand you'll stick with that number, but I don't believe players were ever getting that much a share of revenue.
Would it even come close?
I lived it, so I can through about 8 or 9 years of it. So I think it was pretty accurate.
You did pretty well by it, Doug.
What do you mean I did pretty well by it?
Oh, you're driving an
I'm on the
RV.
Real Kyper show full time.
You're driving an RV. You got a new
RV,
convertible Mini.
Well, guys, here's the biggest challenge.
Homes.
You guys, we can ramble on and give all our theories and philosophies, but at the end of the day, what are the owners and what are the players going to do in the next 2 weeks? You know what they're going to do? They're going to get a deal done. Whether we think they're getting screwed, whether the owners are getting screwed,
well,
they're going to get a deal done.
It's funny that you say
they're
that.
They're not going to go to court like I hear people suggesting. It's all BS. They're going to get a deal done.
So what you're saying, Mac, is the players will give in and find a way to give the owners more. That's what you're saying.
I would hope that Bettman and company are exceptionally fair to the players so that they can come together and get a deal done, because I can guarantee you no player wants to miss the season, whether he's getting 60% of his money or 50% of his money or 70% of his money. He doesn't want to miss the season unless he's very wealthy.
Allan, did we not?
So I think they're going to get a deal done, whether we like it or not.
Allan and Ian, I know you guys keep an eye on other unions, the tabs on what the baseball players went through. Is this a comparable, what we just saw, what happened with MLB, where the owners went back and tried to renegotiate with the ball players and they flat out said no, and then they said, okay, we'll play anyways? Is that a comparable?
Some similarities. There's some similarities to that, but at the end of the day, the MLB is nearing the end of their CBA, and I think there was a lot of posturing to get ready for that negotiation, which on its face appears to be that it's going to be quite contentious. What I would say to Mac is this: I agree there's going to be a deal, and I agree we're going to play hockey, and I don't believe the season is going to be canceled. I would just say we already have a deal. The deal was negotiated 4 months ago. The players are prepared to honor their deal. Mac, I negotiated contracts with you when you were a general manager and I had players on your team. Can you imagine if we made a deal and 4 months later I came back to you and said, hey, Mac, the guy that we just signed, my client, he's doing real well. I'd like a do-over. I think you should pay him an extra $500,000 right now. I mean, you tell me to take a hike.
Pound sand.
We have
you know that I would be unbelievably fair in that situation. I would be unbelievably
fair. You'd rip
fair.
up the contract and give him
and
a
I would
deal?
Try to reward the guy somehow, some way. You know, I'd get him a car maybe to drive or something, you know.
The PA can get Gary a car.
I don't want a car. I want an RV.
Mac, do you think that you can get Gary and the owners to share with the players in expansion revenues and also sale of their franchises on some percentage? That would be fair. I think that would be a good starting point.
I think you guys blew that already. I mean, how you guys on the PA side let that slide through without getting a piece of Vegas's 550 and Seattle's 650. I can't believe that Donald Fear and the geniuses on that side let that slip through the cracks.
Well, perhaps
it was almost as bad as the Olympics sliding through the cracks.
Well, the quid pro quo on that match is we got 25 jobs between the two teams. We got 50 new jobs in the NHL.
Boy, we're all the same.
Okay,
Kippy and I need the league to play because of the Real Kyper show needs this league.
We all need
Allan Walsh and Ian Pulver and people that are very close to me need the league to play as well because we all need to make some money here. So let's cut the bullshit on going to court. Let's cut the bullshit on
No, we're not cutting. No, we're not cutting it because it is a legitimate threat out there. It really is. No different than the threat of maybe not playing is the fact that there might be legal ramifications if they shut down this game. And it's out there.
They're not going to shut it down because both sides know that you go to court and it's a 50-50 chance that you're going to win.
So
and if you lose,
so I don't like those odds if I'm the owner. I'll tell you what.
Big trouble.
If I'm an owner and I'm struggling already,
can afford to lose in court more than the players can afford to.
I'm not sure about that.
Oh, Nick,
if the owners can afford it, if the owners can afford it, why are they coming to the players right now?
Exactly.
Saying they need $300 million. That comes out to $9.66 million per team. That's a third line right now. In the grand scheme of things, it's not. I mean, $300 million is $300 million, but it's not a lot of money. And the owners made this deal. They ratified this deal. They approved this deal unanimously. And now they're sitting 4 months later saying, give us another $300 million and we'll play and we'll set a date to start the season and open up camps. Come on.
They were asking for more money deferred, not just give it to them. Am I wrong on that?
Well,
it's a combination of deferred and escrow.
So let's not get carried away with the $3 million.
All right, Ian. Okay, so I'm going to ask Ian and Allan in terms of this force majeure. I think when we talk about shutting down the league under crazy circumstances, we could be talking about an earthquake and in this case, perhaps a pandemic. But that was if the deal happened before the pandemic, not during one. I'm not sure. You guys know the legal terms better than me. Is it a real legitimate play for Gary and the league to play this card?
I think Gary and his team believe it is. I think that they wouldn't. These guys are smart guys. I mean, they are lawyered up. And so Gary feels that there is some credible argument to be made to play the pandemic card that his owners can't afford to play. There are some owners that are in the hospitality, restaurant, entertainment business as their sole, major sources. So, yeah, I think that they believe that, putting aside basketball and baseball, that they could, make an argument that the pandemic doesn't make sense for them to play the season. And he's at least trying that card, whether he takes it all the way. I kind of tend to agree with Doug that, there will be hockey, there will be a deal, but, like I said earlier, nothing ceases to amaze me anymore in 2020 and in this world and the world of sport. So anything can happen, and they're playing that game right now.
Allan, it can't be an act of God, the pandemic. You negotiated in it.
I think 3 weeks ago, the owners made good on their first 8% of the agreement of this year's payroll during this pandemic. So they've acted on this new collective agreement. I think it was in the first week of November, the players were paid 8% of their salaries already.
Yeah, with regard to force majeure, I think there's a very strong argument on the player side that the collective agreement was negotiated during the pandemic. They looked at the different scenarios out there. They modeled out a worst case scenario. It was openly discussed between the parties. Everyone could see 4 months ago there was a level of foreseeability, one could even say likelihood, that the 2021 season was going to start with no fans in most, if not all, buildings. There's no surprise here. If you negotiated this deal and there was no pandemic, and the pandemic hit 4 months later, that's force majeure. You could then make a great argument. This was not foreseeable. It came out of nowhere. It's done tremendous damage to our business and our ability to run our operations. And the current agreement doesn't work in that scenario. But the entire agreement we have now is because of the pandemic, taking into account the dramatic loss of revenue this coming season and a mechanism in place to get the owners whole over a number of years. At the end of the day, as you said, Mac, the owners are guaranteed to get every single penny of their 50-50 split by the end of the deal, or through extending the deal one more year by the end of that year. So I don't see force majeure being a legal issue in a grievance before an arbitrator or in a court of law.
So, I guess the situation is the owners are going to get 50% of the revenue, whether it's over 6 years, over 7 years. So is what the owners are attempting to do is not have to wait that long to get their 50%. I guess here's I've watched from the outside, not like you two gentlemen have, and Nick, because of your close involvement with the PA. I have become not overly impressed with the way the business has been done on that side. I remember battling as a GM with Goodnow and Company, Ian Pulver and Company, Ted Saskin and Company, and on and on. I haven't seen the same diligence that I witnessed in the past. And I really question whether the league believes they have the stomach to fight the fight. So I don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell this is going to court. I don't believe it. I laughed when I saw the quotes yesterday about it. I hope maybe I will be wrong. I don't think there's a chance, boys, that this is going to court. because I would hope that neither side has the stomach for it and that both sides show each other a little more respect to get a deal done.
I want to just talk about this whole process with, Gary Bettman, and we were all there. We watched Gary Bettman from the very beginning, guys. And yeah, the perception early on in Gary Bettman's career, and you mentioned Bob Goodnow, is Bob kicked his ass. Okay. He wanted, they floated salary caps. They floated a lot of stuff. And the perception was that early Bob got his number, and it seemed like Gary was destined to turn it around. And we know what happened in 2004. All of a sudden, salary cap in, Bob Goodnow out. And it just seemed from then on, it's been this slow, kind of methodical play on Gary over the longevity of 25, 26 years, to the point where he's inducted in the Hockey Hall of Fame. There's a stamp of approval. Gary's a hockey guy. There's your proof. I want to ask all three of you, how hard do you think it was?
That.
Sorry?
Just let me touch on that. I sat in the Board of Governors meetings through that process. And it was a process where we knew that we were going to hang tough because we had no choice in the matter. And I remember sitting there when we would go into a Board of Governor meeting, they'd throw our team budget on the wall. They would show how much was going to the players. And it was preparation like I've never seen. And I knew that it was going to be an unbelievable war because they had no choice. Or at least that's what I believed when I was sitting there, whether you guys believe it or not.
And Mac, just to follow up on that. And that's where Gary was completely in charge. We know that he got the swing vote to only include 8 teams, usually very powerful teams.
Right.
And everybody was on the outside looking in. It really didn't matter as long as he had his small group of supporters. I look at Gary Bettman, and whether we believe he's going to be around for another 2 years, 4 years, or 6 years, these last few years were supposed to be gravy for him. The hard work was done. The battles were over. And now I look at this one where he has to go back to the players after signing a legal documentation on a new CBA and say, can I have a mulligan? I just shanked one in the woods. I want to ask all three of you, how hard do you think that is for Gary Bettman at this point of his legacy to go back and ask for the players a do-over?
Well, when I heard Gary today, it didn't seem to me that he's really got his heart in his argument. To say this isn't a renegotiation when he's in fact seeking a renegotiation, usually Gary has better lines than that. Usually Gary's selling what he's doing a lot harder than just, this is not a renegotiation while I'm renegotiating. Ian, what do you think?
I think that this has all been done during a pandemic. I think that the circumstances in which the business has been conducted on both sides of the table, we've never encountered before. They negotiated a collective bargaining agreement over Zoom. They weren't in the same room. There wasn't the same dynamics. Right now, as we sit here, they're still negotiating over Zoom, okay? And so I think that some benefit of the doubt on both sides of the table has to be given here to see where this all ends up. If it all ends up with a 48-game schedule starting February 1, like we've had on 2 other occasions, then, I don't think anybody's reputations will be tarnished. I think that the business will go forward. I think there's time. Really not starting January 1 now. And so I think it's too early, Nick, to write a new script on the legacy of Gary Bettman. I am hoping that him and his team and the NHLPA can get everything worked out and game on.
Is it, listen, 3 lockouts, guys, a failed 2018 Olympics that, is still ticked off a guy like Connor McDavid. If in fact that there is no hockey season, does that put Gary Bettman's legacy on the line?
I think it puts 2 guys' legacies on the line. Donald Fear, which I'm not sure where that stands in respect to, I know where it is in baseball. I'm not quite sure where it even comes close with what he's done in the hockey side. But I think both of them, their legacies should be affected if we don't play. And I don't disagree with Allan and Ian on the point that Gary's comments today, to me, didn't sound like he had his heart in it. Gary, deep down, like, whether you like Gary or dislike him, he does care for the game. And I don't think he feels very good about this. So I'm hoping that that's going to play and be a positive for both sides to get a deal. And I just have one little story. I remember sitting in the Board of Governors meeting. This is how it's different today than the old days. When we voted to keep the lockout going, there was 30 of us sitting around a table, Board of Governors. I happened to be the only one there from Columbus because Mr. McConnell was sick. And they run through all the teams and they go Anaheim, whoever, and they come to Tampa Bay, or Detroit, I should say. And Mr. Illich says, stay the course. And Bill Davidson at the same time said, stay the course. And Gary said, Bill, that was Detroit's vote. And Bill said, I am Detroit. I am with Detroit. And Gary said, no, Bill, you're with Tampa Bay now. That's basketball. So the owners today are a little more focused than not knowing whether they're in an NBA meeting or an NHL meeting at the time.
Oh, my gosh.
So,
Allan, do you believe that maybe Gary pushed this original deal in July without all the ownership truly knowing what this deal pertained? Could they have, of course, everything goes to ratifying deals, which they did. I mean, could they blame the fact that they weren't paying as much as attention as maybe they should have?
I heard that the majority of the deal was negotiated on the big issues, primarily between Gary and Don directly. And I can tell you that at various times near the end of the negotiation, I was receiving calls from GMs around the league and a few owners asking if I had any details on the framework of the deal and what it looked like, because GMs and owners were not getting any information from Gary. In fact, I remember when the Board of Governors were asked to ratify this deal, the actual documents of the MOU were not yet distributed to all the owners. The owners received a briefing on the deal, but were asked to vote on it before they actually received the document in hand of the agreement. So I think there are a number of owners right now who are not happy that the pandemic there's been the second wave. They're not happy when they're looking at empty buildings and paying players compensation and paying their operations other than player salaries. There may be a few guys who are in who have cash flow issues. There may be other owners who just don't think it's a very good deal. So I think there's a lot of heat on Gary to come back to the players and get a better deal now. The problem is the deal is done. And like I said, I'm not the NHLPA. I'm speaking here as an agent and a guy who represents some players in the league. I respect what you're saying, Doug, but I happen to think Donald Fear and the NHLPA did an amazing job under very trying circumstances, working with Gary and the league in putting together and fashioning a deal, taking into account the pandemic and life after the pandemic. I actually think it's a deal that makes sense for both sides. But there's a balance in that deal. And when one side comes to the table 4 months later and says, we need to change the deal, material terms on the deal that will greatly impact NHL players and the income they will receive in the 2021 season, that's a tough sell, especially when you're not coming to the table and offering anything for that, at least not yet.
Well,
I have a hard time believing that my involvement with the league, I have a hard time believing that Gary would not have relayed to his owners the situation. I guarantee the executive committee would have been totally up on it, which is a big part of it. And I find it hard to believe that the other owners wouldn't be up to speed on this deal.
Then why did they ratify it?
By the same token, you're saying it's greatly going to affect the players' salaries this year, but over the course of the next 6 years, they're going to have to pay back the 50-50 deal. So I'm missing something here. Is it not? I mean, at the end of the 6 years or the end of 7 years, it's going to be 50-50. What am I missing here?
Well, the
players are going to have a worse deal this year.
Well, there's also a fear that 6% won't cover the last year of the CBA, and they're left holding the bag.
So the 50-50 is still the number one thing, is it not, guys? Or is that out the window? What am I missing?
I want to make 2 points. One is with all due respect to Allan, I happen to agree with Doug that Gary and Bill Daly would have briefed all the owners and all the I's dotted to this agreement. They all voted on it. They passed it. They ratified it. These guys are thorough lawyers. They knew the deal that they were signing, and it got passed, which goes to the point they should live by it, okay? But I happen to believe things come up that we don't know, that maybe only Gary Bettman knows, and maybe Don Fair, I'm not sure. Something has come up that has given Gary cause for concern, or he just wants something, he doesn't need it, and he's trying to get it, and if he can't get it, he's going to strike his deal to play and live by the agreement.
Could it be that negotiations for a new TV deal are nowhere near what he thought?
Possibly. Quite possibly.
Something.
I think that they've got to play because they want to get to the new deal, the new TV deal, sooner than later. So I think the TV deal is going to be a very positive deal for the players and the owners, because somebody is coming in with NBC on the American side that's going to make it a more fruitful deal for players and owners. And I think one of the reasons they want to desperately play is they want to get the final year of their deals done and move to the new US deal. I think that's a part of it.
Well, I definitely think there's motivations on the owner side to play the season, and that's probably one of the biggest ones. Also, just going away for a year when the NBA season is starting December 22nd, when there's going to be a Super Bowl in February, Major League Baseball is going to start up for the NHL to just disappear from the sports landscape for a year. They did it once. It caused a lot of damage to the sport. It took many years to get back to where it was. Remember, the New York Rangers had won the Stanley Cup, Kyper. Yeah. Sports Illustrated declared hockey the next big thing, way
The NBA was having trouble getting a TV deal, period, at the time. And momentum was lost.
Why the NHL's hot, why the NBA is not. That was the
cover of Sports Illustrated in 1995.
If there is a shutdown for the rest of the year, I want you guys to know that I'm on fixed income now. But I would be more than glad to buy you lunch and a beer if you come down to Florida, even though I'm on fixed income, because you guys sure as hell will be on close to fixed income too if we don't play. So let's all hope that you're playing. I'll get my money from the Real Kyper show, and you'll get your money from your players.
Allan and
we provide housing?
For sure. Absolutely. Just bring your mask. Allan and Ian, I know some of your players are getting calls from respective clubs. GMs, you want to talk about potentially people on the outside not knowing a thing. Let's point to the general managers. Their job's to get ready for training camp, what they think that still could be something as early as January. What do you tell your players now? Because I know teams like the Islanders are calling guys to come, but I don't think the PA is recommending they leave. What do you guys tell your players?
Well, it's all over the map. I mean, we have players in their home cities skating. I've heard that Anaheim is standing room only. I've heard that San Jose is empty because Santa Clara County won't let the players play. There's very few players in Dallas. There's a lot in St. Louis. It's all over the map. And really, we don't know. I mean, we're down the food chain. It's players association to players to agents, and maybe that's how it should be. But we're doing the best we can to find out information. But I've never had it where you phone a team and they say, "What do you know?" and we say, "What do you know?" and we say nothing, and everybody's guessing.
Players that it depends on your individual situation. There are some players who have great access to ice. They're training with a group of guys. They have a really good setup where they are. Stay where they are. There's other guys that are having trouble right now. Like in Montreal, there's no ice. And the Canadiens practice facility in Brossard is closed. The Canadiens dressing room is closed. The players can't access it right now. So it really all depends on each individual player's situation. I think we can all agree right now that January 1 as a start date to the regular season is out the window. And the closest we're going to get to starting the season, the closest date is January 15. And I wouldn't be surprised if we don't actually start to February 1.
You know what? I talked to some players in the last couple of days that have been told to come to their cities to start the quarantine process. So, and you guys, yet there's some places that aren't doing it. So I guess it's all over the map. I just hope, I got to tell you deep down, I hope that it happens and that it's a positive thing for the players. We really need to play. The league needs to play. I think that's been well documented. And I've talked to you two agents more than I've talked to you in the last 15 years, and I've pretty well had enough of listening to you. So I've really enjoyed your knowledge and your expertise, but I'm sick of listening to you.
Oh, my. He's ready to go to the beach right now, I think. Let me ask you, Allan and Ian, real quick, just in terms of, is with no fans, other than the TV money, is there any value for your players to go play an extra 12 games? Why not 48?
The players have the competitive juices always, and they love to play the game, and they want to play, and they want to have a season with integrity. I have never had a conversation with a player this offseason where a player has said, well, I only want to play 48 games, not 60. Players want to play. Players want to get the season going, and players want to play.
Ian, you see value in 60 over 48?
I agree with Allan that the players will generally do what the NHLPA and the NHL comes up with, with respect to a competitive schedule and compensation arrangements. I agree that they have to play. My client, Thomas Chabot and Ottawa Senators, have not played hockey since last March. And so, it's imperative that the teams, especially that were not in the bubble, have to play. These guys have to play. And the fact that there was nothing done for those 7 teams still gets my craw, that they haven't competed and they were left out and still haven't been reassembled. I have concerns over that on both sides of the table.
All right. We all believe that something's going to get done here. So take a stab at, give me a date on game 1, puck drop.
Well, as the genius Brian Burke said today, that the players don't want to give up Christmas. So it looks like they'll start training camp after Christmas. I'm not buying they don't want to give up Christmas. They just want to get back on the ice as soon as they can. I'm really hopeful that February 1st is going to be the latest we're going to start to play. Hopefully before then.
I think the players are a lot like your wife, Jill, where they'll do anything to get the guys out of the house.
Exactly.
Ian, what do you think? Mid-January, or we pushing this thing to February?
48 game schedule that will enline in the annals of the history of the NHL in the last 30 years. Another 48 game schedule starting somewhere between January 20 and February 1. And that's how I see it playing out.
Last one to you, Allan.
Starting puck drop on the regular season, February 5th.
Allan
Walsh continues to agree with everything I say. That is unbelievable.
So we got to wait this thing out. We may not have any significant progress for another couple of weeks. It could be the stalemate that we're at right now.
Man, do I need a drink after this?
We've solved nothing.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I can't thank you guys enough for taking some time out and at least explaining a few things to us. I thought it was soup du jour, not forced majeure. That's my little entree joke. No.
Yeah, I appreciate all the knowledge you guys put forth.
Beware Ron Maclean.
I really appreciate the education today.
Anytime, Mac. Anytime.
Okay, guys. Take care, guys, and good luck. Let's get the game back.
All right. Doug Maclean, Allan Walsh, and Ian Pulver on the Real Kyper at Noon show. Thanks for joining us.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thanks.
Our thanks to Ian Pulver, Wool Sports, Allan Walsh from Octagon Agency, always outspoken, always fun to follow on Twitter. And yes, from RV of America, Doug Maclean. Yes, he's in Florida now. He's situated. He's ready to rock and roll. We're going to get a green light soon. Hopefully, out of that conversation that we got, there is some hope, folks, for the start of the 2021 season. So keep it real, keep it close. And if you're a first-time watcher, subscribe to the Real Kyper at Noon show. I'm Nick Kypreos. Thanks for joining me.